the one and only podcast by a blind wrestling fan.
Wrestling in the dark!
Hey up guys, today on Wrestling in the Dark we take a look at WWE's Payback 2020 pay-per-view. There are huge spoilers ahead, you've officially been warned, and if you're sticking around, buckle up, have fun, and let's take a look at what happened. The show kicked off with Bobby Lashley versus Apollo Crews in a United States Championship match, with Hurt Business at ringside, although they don't get involved, they just sort of politely sit at ringside, which was a surprise. As the match begins, Lashley tries to bring the power, but Apollo answers with the speed. He manages to pop off a dropkick early, and eventually he ends up hitting a moonsault on the outside. It doesn't really do him any good though, because it doesn't take Lashley long to take control. He dumps Crews over the top rope, damaging the midsection, stays on top of him, sends him into the post, and despite a quick kick to the back of the neck from Crews, Lashley doesn't go down and delivers a dominator for the near fall. Crews tries to get back into it. He comes off the middle rope for a crossbody. Joe points out that this isn't too clever considering the damage to the midsection, but then he just carries on, hitting moves that damage his midsection. He gets a splash, a spinebuster, a standing moonsault, a pair of German suplexes, a frog splash, and for a minute I really thought Crews was actually going to come out of this with the win, but Lashley manages to turn the tide back in his favour, delivers a German suplex on the apron, locks in the full Lashley, and Apollo is forced to tap. I only gave this a 2 out of 6, it just sort of happened. It didn't go too long, there wasn't anything that really stood out as being special. I like Crews' offense, but in the end it was just an excuse to get the title onto Lashley, which is fine. Like I said, it just sort of happened. Next up, we got Big E versus Sheamus, and I'm really enjoying the storyline that's going on with Big E right now. I love that everyone's trying to get him to change, and he's just out to prove that you can still be yourself and be successful. Everyone wants him to be all serious now that the New Day are injured and he's going out on his own, and he is just out to prove that he doesn't need to change, he can still be that same guy. They show a recap of the exchange between E and The Miz on Talking Smack, and it shows that serious side and explains that he is serious when he needs to be, and I really like that dynamic. This match with Sheamus was also really good. I thought both guys looked great. It started off slow, both guys hitting big shots. Eventually E misses with a splash, which allows Sheamus to take control and start working his leg in order to neutralise the power game and soften him up for the cloverleaf. He hits an Irish Curse backbreaker, applies the half crab for a bit. When E fights out of that, Sheamus goes up to the top rope, launches himself off, but Big E catches him, delivers a pair of belly-to-belly suplexes and a Uranagi for the cover. Sheamus tries again from the top rope, and this time he actually connects with the shoulder block and manages to apply the sharpshooter for a bit. Eventually he manages to get the suicide dive style spear that he does, driving Sheamus off the apron, and on the inside he tries for the big ending, but Sheamus slips out, locks him in a heel hook. Big E fights out of this and Sheamus just nails him with a nasty sounding knee. After that, Sheamus looks for the brogue kick, but Big E counters, plants Sheamus, whatever that means, and then goes for the big ending, delivers it, and picks up the win. In my opinion, if they keep going like this, there's some really big things in store for Big E, and I actually can't wait. I'd like to see him go off and feud with whoever wins the Universal title match, which we'll get to in a bit. And I just thought that this match made both guys look really good. Sheamus looked smart, trying to outthink Big E, and Big E just looked like he had the heart, the intensity. Post-match he goes over to the announce table and he's just screaming at Graves that Graves is wrong and that Big E does have it and he can get it done, and that Graves needs to preach it to the people, and he comes across as so intense. It was just, I really enjoyed this part of the show. It was a strong 4 out of 6 match, and I really can't wait to see what's next for Big E. Next up was Baron Corbin versus Matt Riddle, and I've got to say, I really wish that Matt had been given something a little bit better than this as his first feud. I was a huge mark for Riddle when he was in NXT, and I don't know, I just feel like he could have made a bit more of an impact than he has. It could have been slotted into a cooler storyline. I feel like sometimes NXT marks like me just expect a little bit too much. Don't get me wrong, this match wasn't bad at all. While I was watching it, I was actually entertained, quite enjoyed it, but since watching it, it's not like I can think of anything in particular that really stood out to me that made it feel special and feel different. But it, like I say, it also wasn't bad. Baron doesn't waste any time. He attacks Riddle straight away before the bell's even rung. The ref checks to see if Riddle can continue, which he can. The bell goes. Baron drives Riddle into the corner, starts stomping away at him. Riddle tries to fight back. He kicks Baron in the chest a few times, looks for the Kimura, gets a sleeper locked in. Baron fights out, gets locked back in a sleeper, fights out again, slinging Riddle off him to take back control. Later, Baron hits a deep 6, which Riddle kicks out of. Baron gets the full mount, raining down shots on Riddle, who weathers the storm and eventually ends up getting the bro to sleep, going up top and hitting a floating bro for the win. I'm just not into the Matt Riddle that we're getting at the minute. We had a pre-match interview with this new broadcast colleague, the name of which escapes me. I really didn't manage to catch it and write it down, but it's a new person. And in that pre-match interview, he says that Corbin's been harsh in his vibe, and the stallion is gonna run all over the king, and it feels so awkward and clunky. And the best way that I can say is that it seems more like the newly bros version of Matt Riddle than the intense Matt Riddle that we used to get in NXT. And that's a real shame, because the newly bro stuff was the worst stuff that Riddle did in NXT. So here was me thinking, yeah, okay, at least this is over and he can move on. And same with Riddle, because post-match he gets in an interview and he's like, yeah, I beat him, I can move on, but then Baron attacks him, so this feud is clearly continuing. I gave this a 3 out of 6. I feel like it probably could have been better given a few more minutes, but as it stood, there really wasn't anything that made it feel special. The women's tag titles were on the line next. Shayna Bazler and Nia Jax taking on the golden role models Sasha Banks and Bayley. This was probably my least favourite match of the night, other than the Lashley Cruz match, which, let's face it, was barely a match. I just struggle with tag team matches, and this really did struggle to keep my attention, but there was a few spots that stood out to me. I liked that Bayley and Banks were utilising fast tags and double team manoeuvres just to juxtapose the fact that they're a real experienced team and Shayna and Nia are not. There's a bit where Bayley gets a heel hook on Nia. Nia gets back to her feet while it's still locked on and just drags Bayley over so that Nia can tag Shayna, who comes in, lets loose with strikes left, right and centre. At the end, there was the finish was really cool. Nia gets hit with a double back body drop, but the Golden Role Models don't realise that Shayna's actually the legal one. She comes in, she gets Sasha in the mutal lock, puts Bayley in the Kirifuda clutch, and then sort of uses Sasha's arm to choke Bayley out, so that when Bayley taps, it's technically Sasha that's making a tap. And I just really love that. Man, I'm a huge Shayna mark. I'm really glad that she gets to be the champ on the main roster now. Whether or not I'm a fan of Nia Jax, I still don't really know. I go through phases with her, where sometimes I really enjoy what she's doing, sometimes I don't, but I kind of like this odd pairing with Shayna. So yeah, I'm happy that Shayna at least gets to have a championship on the main roster, because they really let her down, in my opinion. They gave her a good first few months, and she had that really good showing in the Elimination Chamber, but since then she's just sort of fallen off the radar, and I'm really glad to see her getting used a bit more. So in the space of a week, we've gone from Bayley and Banks holding all of the gold to Bayley being the only one with a belt left, and I'm going to be really interested to see who turns on who. Sasha could easily get jelly and turn on Bayley, but Bayley could easily get too big for her boots and kick Sasha to the curb. You lost your belt, I've still got mine, you're useless, and that sort of thing. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works. Let me know in the comments section who you think will turn on the other first. Keith Lee versus Randy Orton was next, and this was a short but sweet match, to be honest. I feel like given a little bit more time, these two could do something really special, because for the shortness of this match, it was actually really entertaining still. So in the early moments, Randy does his best to stop Keith from picking up momentum, because we all know once he does that, it's almost impossible to stop him. But he doesn't manage it. Keith gets a leapfrog and delivers a cross body, which just makes Randy mad, to be honest. Randy starts yelling at him, "I'm Randy Orton, I'm the legend killer, I demand your respect," and then he just starts nailing him with these nasty sounding chops again and again, but this just fires Keith up. Keith answers with a Grizzly Magnum. They end up fighting on the outside. Randy hoists Keith up, actually manages to get him up and dumps him on the announce table before taking control for a little bit. Eventually though, Keith explodes and just drives Randy out of the ring, and the commentary really puts over how far Randy went, going from the middle of the ring to the outside, and Keith returns the favour, dumping Randy on the announce table. Randy manages to capitalise and he gets the draping DDT. He advertises the RKO, and Keith actually manages to counter with the Spirit Bomb and picks up the win over Randy Orton. Despite the new inferior entrance music, I actually think that they're doing a really good job with Keith Lee so far. This was a really good way to get the eyes on him, to give him a big victory and let people know this is a guy that you need to keep your eye on. They had him interact with JBL backstage earlier on in the show, and they had this match with Orton, and I think having him interacting with these legends, getting a win over Orton, it's just a really good way to say this is the guy. Keep your eyes peeled, because there is stuff coming. Despite being so short, this was a solid 4 out of 6 match, because I really feel like given 5 more minutes, this could have developed into something really, really cool. The Mysterios versus Rollins and Murphy was the match of the night, in my opinion. It was so much fun. I was entertained the whole time. I didn't know what was going to happen. There were some cool spots. The storytelling was great. I just think that these four have got great chemistry in the ring, and I just really enjoyed this. So to start the match, despite making it look like Ray was going to start things, Dominic comes in hot, starts taking it to Rollins and Murphy, keeping the pace high, and commentary play up the fact that Rollins usually comes in with a game plan, and Dominic appears to have disrupted that. The Mysterios hit a side Russian leg sweep drop kick combo on Murphy, and Race just screams at Rollins, "Get your punk ass in here," which Rollins does. Unfortunately for Ray, Rollins and Murphy are a really good team, and they actually manage to take control, and they sort of dominate Ray for a little bit, working the midsection. When he eventually gets a tag to Dominic, Rollins just delivers a Falcon Arrow to Dominic, and that allows them to keep control. Eventually Dom sends both the heels to the outside, struggles over to tag his dad, but he does actually manage to get the tag, and this leads to a really cool sequence. So Ray gets a moonsault, he goes for the 619, Rollins scouts it, goes for the powerbomb, Ray rolls through, and then Dom gets a big DDT on Murphy, but Rollins just nails him with a sling blade. Thought that was really cool. Then Rollins manages to get back on top again, keeping Ray under control, and eventually he decides that he's going to put the finishing touches. He demands that Murphy kick Ray in the head, but Ray manages to counter and uses Rollins' momentum against him, and this means that Murphy nails Rollins with the kick instead. This leads this leads to Dominic coming in, hitting the 619, the frog splash, and picking up the win for the Mysterios. I really like the dynamic of having a father and son tag team. Ray and Dominic working together is just a really cool thing, and I actually really hope that they get a shot at the tag titles down the line, because I think that could be really, really cool. I think that this story with Rollins has been great, and I just don't think they could have done a better job of introducing Dominic to the WWE Universe, having him come in and making him feel like an actual legit superstar that can hang with the top guys, and having the experience given to him by working with Mysterio, with Rollins, with Murphy. It's just going to be doing wonders for him, and I think that this was such an enjoyable match. It was a 4+. Given a few more minutes, this would definitely have ended up a 5, and was by far the match of the night. So we arrive at the main event, a triple threat, no holds barred match for the Universal Championship between The Fiend, Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns. The only problem is that Reigns is being an absolute dick and he hasn't signed the contract, and so this is basically just a match between The Fiend and Braun Strowman. Strowman doesn't even bother with his entrance, he just goes straight after The Fiend and actually manages to gain control, but it doesn't take long for The Fiend to hit a Sister Abigail and Braun kicks out. On the outside, it drives Braun through the announce table with a Uranagi. It hits him with a big mallet sort of thing, I don't know, that's what they described it as, a big mallet, and it screams this horrible, guttural, psychotic scream before sending Braun into the steps face first. They fight up onto the stage, where Braun manages to buy himself a bit of time to recover by driving The Fiend into the LED boards, but again, it doesn't take it long to recover, and it looks for the Sister Abigail again on the stage. Braun manages to avoid this, and in the end, he drives The Fiend off the stage, crushing it with his body weight. But he can't win like this because it's not Falls Count anywhere, so he drags it back to the ring and he decides to go up to the top rope to finish it off once and for all. But once again, it recovers way too quickly for the slow, lumbering man, and it goes and delivers a superplex that devastates the ring, making it collapse. Of course, this is when Roman chooses his moment. He comes down with Paul Heyman, signing the contract as he goes. He tries to cover The Fiend, no luck. Covers him again, no luck. Then he tries covering Strowman, again, no dice. So now he's pissed off. He gets a chair, starts destroying Strowman with the chair before yelling, "Count, bitch!" at the ref. But again, no luck. But oh wait, The Fiend is back up. It gets Roman in the mandible claw, but Roman doesn't hesitate, now that he's a heel, in kicking the Fiend down low. Who knew that The Fiend had testicles? Then he turns round, delivers the spear to Strowman, and picks up the Universal Championship, the title that he never lost. I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really enjoy the dynamic that Strowman and The Fiend have got. It's this Clash of the Titans, monsters going at it, the Freddy versus Jason kind of dynamic, and I just think that it works really, really well, and it's always so chaotic and just bam, 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 and it's just an action movie, and every now and again it isn't actually that bad to watch a mindless action movie. Then you've got Roman, who just doesn't want any of that. He's just Roman. He's just this normal guy, and he's coming back, and he's not the same guy as he was. He's playing the mind games, not signing the contract, picking his moment, coming in, destroying Strowman with a chair, and just that new attitude that he's got. I just thought that this worked really, really well. I'm sure that a lot of people won't be happy because there's still so many Roman haters out there, and I'm really glad that they're probably crying lovely tears of hatred, because that's just what I want from those horrible smarks that hate Roman, because there's no reason, because he's such a charismatic, badass sort of guy, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes as this heel champion. I don't mind that they started off with this sort of chicken shit attitude, but I hope that they don't push too far with this. I'd like to see Heyman sort of being the devil on Roman's shoulder, encouraging him to have these tactics, and then eventually Roman just getting fed up of it and just being like, I'm not listening to you anymore, I can't be bothered, this isn't how I'm doing things, I don't need to play mind games and avoid people, I am the big dog, I can do what I want, and just kick Heyman to the curb, because I don't really feel like he needs a mouthpiece, and I certainly don't feel like that mouthpiece needs to be Heyman. But yeah, this was a solid 4 out of 6 match, and I really enjoyed it. A decent way to cap off the show. When it comes down to it, this wasn't the most groundbreaking pay-per-view ever. It wasn't all that exciting, and with the exception of the Mysterio Rollins match, the main event, and the Big E Sheamus match, I didn't really feel like there was that much to offer. Even Orton versus Keith was, it just felt like it was over way too quickly. I wasn't ready for that match to be over. But I feel like they did a fairly good job telling the stories that they needed to tell, going in the directions that they needed to go in, and you can't really expect them to go all out with this pay-per-view, considering that SummerSlam has only just been. So yeah, overall I'd give this a 4 out of 6 for the whole pay-per-view, because I felt like it achieved what it set out to do. It wasn't amazing, it wasn't bad, and it had some decent points in it. If you want to let me know what you thought of Payback or this episode of Wrestling in the Dark, you know where the comment section is. If you're new, hit the subscribe button. Whether you're new or not, hit the like button. Or else, I'm off, and you should have a good one.